Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. I'm Mackie Hall, and I'm fascinated with Indian mandala circles. It amazes me how you can pack so much detail in such a simple shape. I've also been fascinated with round logos. Now combine the two, and you've got the recipe for some incredibly memorable artwork, just like these. So today, I'm going to build on a fundamentals video that I created entitled Mastering the Scale and Rotate Tools by building this. Learning this will give you a pathway to building some of your own incredible logos and art. So without further ado, let's go. All right, let's get started. Let's create a new document. Note that our new document will have a width of 1,000 points, a height of 1,000 points, a single artboard, and the RGB color mode. Before we get started, I want to mention that we are using the Essentials layout. To access the Essentials layout or to switch to it, go to the top right-hand corner of your screen and select Essentials. Also want to mention that we are using Smart Guides. To activate Smart Guides, select View and scroll down to Smart Guides or click Control U. One final thing worth mentioning is that we'll be using the bottom of the page to show tips and tricks and key command recommendations. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to create our polar grid. The way we do that is we go to our left toolbar, click and hold our line tool, and scroll down to our polar grid tool. Once we've done that, we click anywhere on our artboard. And let's change our default size to 700 points wide and 700 points tall. We're going to have 5 concentric dividers. Those are the dividers out from center. Next, we'll have 20 radial dividers. Those are the pi wedges within our polar grid. Once we've created our polar grid, we want to center align it both vertically and horizontally. We do that by clicking on the top bar or using our align tool. If you don't see your align tool or see the align tools on the toolbar, all you need to do is go to Window, Align, or Shift F7. Before we get started, we want to make sure that our grid fill is transparent and our stroke is black. One more thing we want to do is we want to change our stroke thickness to 0.25 of a point. If you don't see stroke on the toolbar, you can see it by selecting Window, Stroke, or Control F10. The next thing we want to do is we want to rotate our grid slightly so that our top pi wedge is vertical. Notice right now that our pi wedge is slightly off center. We rotate our grid simply by selecting our rotate tool, double clicking it, and then rotating it to the appropriate angle. An easy way to rotate our grid to center is knowing that since we've got 20 pi wedges, we need to cut that angle in half. An easy way to do that is by writing in 360 degrees divided by 40. Click on OK, and note that our grid is now rotated properly. Next thing we want to do, since we're only going to be using a single wedge, we don't need the rest of our grid. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of it. The first way that comes to mind is grabbing our direct selection tool and clicking and selecting any piece within our grid. Note, however, that our lines are not broken up, so that won't work. Another way to do it is using our shape builder tool. Here's how we do that. We grab our selection tool and we select our piece. Next, we'll grab our shape builder tool and we'll click and drag over the parts of the shape that we are not going to need. Once we're done, we release, and we've gotten rid of most of our shape. Now to get rid of the rest of our shape, we will use the direct selection tool. Next, we'll grab our direct selection tool. We'll click and drag over as much of the shape as we can without influencing our main pi wedge, and we'll press backspace twice. That will delete the bulk of it. We'll do the same thing throughout the rest of our shape to get rid of anything we don't need. Again, selecting our shape, pressing backspace twice. Now that we've completed that, we can get started building our shape. First thing we're going to do is we're going to select our ellipse tool. We can do it two ways. First way is to click and hold our rectangle tool and drag down to our ellipse tool. Next, we can always just press L on our keyboard. Once done with that, let's zoom into our grid shape. We can do that by pressing Control plus, and then we can navigate along our artboard by pressing our spacebar and clicking and dragging down, just like I've done there. Next, with our ellipse tool selected, we're going to hover over the top center of our top grid in our pie wedge. Once we're there, we're going to click and start dragging out with our Alt and our Shift keys depressed. That allows us to drag out from center and keep a round shape. We want to drag out until our circle intersects the outside of our pie wedge. Once we've created our first circle, we're going to copy and paste in front using Control-C to copy and Control-F to paste in front. Once we're done with that, we're going to hold our Alt key down and click and drag vertically. Using the Alt key allows us to originate our scale from center. Once done with that, we're going to grab our selection tool and we're going to drag across both ellipses. Once done, we're going to use our Pathfinder tool. If you don't have your Pathfinder tool available, all you need to do is go to Window, Pathfinder, or select Shift Control F9. Once our Pathfinder tool is visible, we are going to select minus front. What that does is it subtracts our front shape from our back shape or the circle. Next, we'll grab our direct selection tool and we're going to click and drag across the bottom of our new shape. Once done, we're going to hit backspace twice to get rid of that shape. Once we've created our new shape, with our selection tool selected, we're going to click and drag over it and then make sure our fill is black and our stroke is transparent. With our shape still selected, let's zoom into it. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go outlines. Do that by pressing Control-Y, and we're going to arrow our circle slightly below the edge of our grid, just like this. If you go beyond the grid, it's okay. We'll fix the shape later. Next, we'll zoom out on our piece a little bit, and using our spacebar, we'll navigate down to make our next grid line visible. Once done with that, we're going to copy and paste in front our shape. We're going to hold our Shift key and we're going to arrow it down near our next grid mark. Once done, with our selection tool still selected, we're going to hover over the bottom right of our shape. We're going to hold our Shift and Alt key down. We're going to click and drag until our shape is the same width as our grid marks. Next, we're going to zoom in. We're going to arrow our shape slightly below the grid mark like we did above. Let's zoom out. Next, we're going to repeat this process for our next 3 grid marks. Again, we'll copy and paste in front, hold our Shift key, arrow it down, and then we'll grab our Shift and Alt key, hover over the bottom right, and then scale our piece to the same width as our grid marker. Once done, we'll zoom in and we'll arrow our piece slightly below our grid marker. We'll zoom out once again. We'll navigate a little bit lower and we'll do it again. We'll copy, paste in front, hold our Shift key, arrow down to the next grid marker, hold our Shift and Alt keys, and scale down to the width of our next grid marker, just like that. Again, we'll zoom in, we'll arrow our shape slightly below our marker, and then zoom out again, and we'll repeat the process one final time. Once done, let's make the entire page visible. Let's leave outlines, and we can deselect our shape by clicking anywhere on screen. We're off to a good start now. One more thing we want to do is we want to add some circles above the top of our shape. We're going to do this by grabbing our ellipse tool. We're going to go back to the center of our pie wedge, click and drag across our shape, holding our Shift and Alt keys down until we get a circle that works for us. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to arrow above our pie wedge, just like that. And then we're going to copy and paste in front another circle. We're going to hold our shift key down and arrow up 5 times. We'll do that one more time. Again, we'll copy, paste in front, and arrow up 5 times. Once we're done and with our top circle still selected, we're going to click on our scale tool. We'll double click on it, and then we'll set our scale to 25% uniform. Click OK. Once done with that, we'll grab our selection tool, click anywhere on screen to deselect, and then we'll select our second circle. Once again, we'll double click on our scale tool, and we'll scale our circle uniformly to 50%. Once done with that, we'll grab our selection tool, click anywhere on screen, and we're ready to rotate. The way we begin our rotate process is with our selection tool still selected, we drag across our entire shape. Once that's done, we'll hold our shift key down and deselect our pie wedge. Next thing we do is we select our rotate tool, and notice in the middle of our selected element, there is a rotate axis. We're going to select the rotate axis by holding down our Alt key, then clicking and dragging our axis, and then dragging it all the way down to the bottom of our pie wedge. You'll know it's the exact bottom when it says anchor on Smart Guides. Once we're done with that, we can select Preview, and we want to rotate our shape 20 times over 360 degrees. The way we do that is we select our rotate angle, and we write in 360 divided by 20. We'll tab off that, and note how our shape rotates. We'll select Copy. Once we've done that, you'll notice we've taken one step in our rotation process. To complete the rest, we need to duplicate that action all the way around the circle. We do that by repeatedly pressing Ctrl D until we get all the way around. Once done, we grab our selection tool, click anywhere on screen to deselect. Note that we've created our shape. Now that we've completed that, we don't need our pie wedge anymore. So with our selection tool still selected, we click and delete that piece. Next thing we'll do is we want to take all these individual shapes and transform them into a singular complex shape. We're going to do that by clicking and dragging across our entire shape. And with our Pathfinder tool still selected, we'll select Unite. Click on that. We can deselect our piece, and now our shape is one singular complex shape. We can see that by selecting our piece and clicking and dragging it. Note that it moves as a singular element. Let's undo that. And we can deselect. One thing to note is when we create a shape like this, sometimes our individual shapes overlap and they don't create a perfect shape. We can see that when we zoom in to any part of our shape. The way we do that is we'll hit our Control and Space bar and bring up our magnify tool. Then we want to drag in close to the piece that we want to analyze. Note that on our outermost shape, the individual shapes overlapped before being united. We can fix this by simplifying the shape. Here's how we do it. We grab our direct selection tool and we click on our shape. Next, we select Object, Path, Simplify. Once we've got that, we're going to select More Options. And then we're going to drag the corner point angle threshold to 0. Click OK. And we're going to repeat the process all the way down our shape. We'll deselect our last shape and zoom out. Now we've got our initial shape. Now, since we've got our shape, what if we want to rotate parts of it? Here's how you do that. With your direct selection tool still selected, let's zoom into our shape. Now with our direct selection tool still selected, we'll click on our second shape and our fourth shape. We'll first click on that. Notice we're not selecting any paths. Then I'm going to hold my shift key and select my fourth shape. Once done with that, let's double click on our rotate tool. And now we want to rotate our shapes halfway so that our flower petals are staggered. The way we do that, we know we've got our shape repeated 20 times around the circle, so we want to rotate it halfway. The way we do that is we enter 360 divided by 40 instead of divided by 20 and click OK. We'll go back to our selection tool, click off our shape, let's zoom out and bring our entire page into view. Note that minor change adds a little bit of complexity to a simple shape. What if we want to make a fill within our shape? Here's how you do it. Let's start with the center of our flower. We'll zoom in. Next, what we'll do is we'll grab our direct selection tool once again. We'll select our innermost shape. Again, being sure not to touch a path. We're going to copy and paste in front. Next, what we'll do is we'll deselect our shape and we'll select our outside path of our new shape. We'll delete that shape by pressing backspace twice. And now we're left with a fill for our innermost shape. Let's change that color to a brown. We'll select our shape, we'll double click our fill, and we'll find a brown that works for us. It looks good right there. We'll deselect our shape by clicking anywhere on our artboard, and let's bring our entire page back into view. We can do the same thing if we want our flower to be red. Once again, we'll select our outermost shape. We'll copy and paste it in front. Next, we'll deselect our shape and select the outside path. Once done with that, we'll hit backspace twice to delete the outside line. And then we'll select the interior shape. Once we've done that, we'll change our fill to red. We'll deselect. Now, if we want to add a darker hue to the inside of our flower, here's how you do that. Let's zoom in. And this time we'll select our second outermost shape. Again, not touching any paths, copying, pasting in front, deselecting our shape, and then selecting the outside path of that shape that we've just duplicated. We'll press backspace twice. This time, instead of selecting a color, we'll select our shape, and we'll go to transparency. If you don't see your transparency window, you can always go to Window, Transparency, or select Shift-Control F10. Within your transparency window, you want to change your opacity to 20%. Let's do the same thing for our innermost shapes. Once again, we'll select our next shape, copy and paste it in front, deselect it, select the outside path, and delete. Next, we'll select our inside shape, and we'll change the transparency to 20%. Next, we'll do the same thing with our inside shape. Again, we'll select the fill of the shape, we'll copy and paste it in front, we'll deselect our shape, we'll select our outside path, hit backspace twice to delete that shape. Next, we'll select our fill shape now and change our opacity within the transparency window to 20%. We'll deselect our shape, bring our entire page into view, and we are done. So there you have it. Now that you've learned these tools, you can start jumping off on your own and building things just like this. So with that being said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Otherwise, throw me a like. I'd really appreciate that. And lastly, subscribe. I'd appreciate that just a little bit more. We'll see you next time. See you.